In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a revenue bucket distribution chart for a list of clients or a list of prospects. So imagine that this list in my Google Sheet is a list of companies. I've just hidden the name of the companies for confidentiality reasons, but you still have the industry of the company, the annual revenue of the company, and the headcount, so the amount of employees in the company. This data was collected via the API of Apollo.io. I will leave the link in the description below if you're interested in this service. It's cheaper than Clearbit, and you can enrich your data using Apollo.io. So just call the API using, for instance, the domain name of the company or the name of the company, the brand, and it will, for some of them, for a lot of them actually, retrieve the annual revenue, the headcount, and many other data items that you can use for your research. In this tutorial, we will focus on the annual revenue that was collected through the API of Apollo.io. As you can see, I've managed to collect the revenue for a number of lines in my spreadsheet. I had, I think, 567 companies in the list, and I've managed to collect 192 revenue lines in this spreadsheet. And what we will do is try to make sense of the distribution in revenue buckets for all those companies. How do we do this? I create another tab in my Google Sheet called Revenue Distribution. And I will create two columns in this other sheet, in this other tab. One will be called revenues, the other one will be called bins. It could have been called buckets, so it's the revenue buckets. What we do first is copy all the revenues we have in the column annual revenue in this sheet right here. So we copy it. Then we paste the values right here. So we paste values only to keep just the values. Then what we will do, but I already did it, we go to data and we sort it A to Z to actually remove all the empty cells, to just keep the revenues where we have the revenues for the companies, which means we have, I think, 193 lines minus the title, so 192 lines of revenues. Then we will create another column with the bins, so the buckets that we want to have ultimately in the chart or in this list. They have to make sense, so you have to have a look at what you have on your list. So here I started with 5,000 because my first company had a declared annual revenue of $5,000. So I started with 5,000, and then very quickly I went to 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, and I went up to 50 billion, because one of the companies in my list, the last one I think, had a revenue of 34 billion. So if I wanted to take into account all the lines in my first column, I needed those buckets. And you can set them up the way you want. You can obviously start with, for instance, 100,000 and then add automatically via a formula 100,000 or 500,000 to each line, and then just drag down to get all your buckets. Or you can create them one by one, as I did. This will give you, let's say, a specific angle in your final chart. Then what we have to do is name those columns. Obviously, they already have a name in the title, but we want to name them at the sheet level. So we go to Data, Named Ranges, and then we can name the range. And as you can see, I already did it for the column A, which I named Revenues, and the column B, which I named Bins. So it's already done. I will close it. The next step is to go to an empty column. I could have done it in column C, I did it in column D. And in front of your first bucket, so just in front of the first bucket, here 0 to 5,000, you will paste this formula. I will also leave the formula in the description. It compares two columns, the ones we named revenues and bins, as you can see. And it will actually tell you how many companies you have in each bucket, in each range. So you have to do it just once. No, you don't have to drag it down. So if I remove this completely, now the cells are empty, and I just paste it in the first cell like this, and it will populate all the cells and leave a 0 here. Doesn't matter. What I did also, just to cross-check that I had analyzed all my revenue lines, was to sum the cells from D2 to D18 or 19 right here, and I have 192 analyzed companies, as you see, analyzed revenue lines, so it matches my 193 minus 1, 192 right here. So everything is correct. The next step, if you want to create this chart, is to create a chart. So you create a chart, and then you have obviously to set up the data range in your chart. And what you take is one column, the bin column, and the amount of companies in this column. So it's B2 to B18 for the first part of the range, as you can see right here. And it's D2 to D18, the column with the amount of companies, for the second part. Then you have to choose which column you will use for the labels. The labels right here, so in the legend. So you can choose it right here, and I chose the column B for the labels. If I choose the column D, then it doesn't make any sense because it just tells you how many companies there are, and you already have this piece of data on the slices themselves. So you choose the column B. And if you go to the Customize tab of the chart editor, to the pie slice, there you can actually determine, so pie chart, yes, the slice pie chart here, the slice label. The slice label, you just choose that it will be a value. The chart was a donut chart, as you can see, and yes, and I just wrote a very explicit title, which makes it very clear for anyone looking at the chart to know what's going on the chart here. So it's a distribution of the clients per ARR, so annual recurring revenue buckets, for 192 companies. So that's it. And I also explained that this first bucket, the 5,000, is actually the companies making from $0 to $5,000 a year. And as you can see here, I made it even more explicit in this summary. So the way you do this is from the second line, you create a concatenation with some text and the reference of the column B2 to the column B3, and then you just drag it down and it will create all those lines. It makes it easier for anyone who doesn't want to understand what's going on the chart to see the explanations in a table format. So you can see obviously that you have a large concentration of companies here, from 2 million to 20 million a year in this client list. So that was the way to create a distribution chart based on a list of clients or revenues after enriching your data using Apollo.io.